Hey everybody, welcome back to Sunday Afternoon Smokes, your casual conversation podcast from the upstate of South Carolina. My name is Chris. I'm your host. I'm a realtor. I'm also the owner and operator of The Cigar Box, a mobile cigar bar that serves the upstate and beyond. Most conversations are enjoyed over a cigar while I interview the local entrepreneurs, business professionals, and entertainers that make the greater Greenville area one of the most popular places to live in the country. So I hope you get to sit back, light a cigar, and enjoy the show. Today, I have the privilege of sitting down with Cam Hill. And so, Cam, man, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to have you. I like to let my guests introduce themselves. So take a minute, say hey, say as much or as little about yourself as you like. And while you do that, I'm going to light my cigar.
That sounds good. Well, my name's Cam Hill. I would say I'm new to the upstate, but I've been here for 13 years now. I'm the executive director of Lead Collective. We're a nonprofit working with students, middle and high school, from under-resourced communities here in the Greenville area. And I'm the pastor of spiritual formation at One Community Church. So love what I get to do, love where I live, and yeah, super thankful for this area and the work that I get to be a part of, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, man. Now, just like I interview a lot of people that I already know. I'm starting to run out of those, and I'll wind up working on the recommendations for my podcast guests. But like, to just for the whoever listens, to be fair, we don't know each other. Like, I've met you one time. I met you one time at it was called like the Growth Forum or Growth Initiative or whatever it's called. I think it's Growth Forum.
Yeah.
Mutually through Chris Cloud.
He says hi, by the way.
Oh, hey, man. Hey, Chris. How you doing, buddy? So this is a pretty raw get together right here, so but it's going to be a good time. I mean, we can't sit down and record a podcast and smoke cigars and have a bad time.
No, that's right.
That's
That's right.
Yeah. First section, always on the cigar section. You asked for something kind of mild, medium.
Yeah.
Is that usually, I don't know, how many cigars do you smoke? Like, how much do you smoke?
Not often anymore. When I was in college, I got like pretty big into cigars. There was a cigar shop. So I went to college in Southwest Ohio, Cedarville University, and in the Dayton area, there was a cigar shop called The Wharf. And I was at The Wharf at least probably once a week. We actually weren't allowed to use tobacco. It was a private Christian university. So if there's anybody out there listening, I'm long gone since then. But
statute of limitations have expired. Has expired.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I was there probably once a week, and I don't know that I knew a whole lot about cigars, but I knew lighter tended to be more mild, darker wraps tended to be more robust, and some of the brands that I was smoking, like I still remember those. It was like Perdomo, Gurkha, Oliva, but that's about it. Most of that knowledge has faded, and now I would say I smoke a handful of times a year.
Yeah, 4 or 5 times a year, something like that. Yeah. I don't know, man. Yeah, I went to a Bible college that was independent, fundamental Baptist. No tobacco, no alcohol, can't go to the movies. Girls have to wear dresses and skirts. They had to wear like pantyhose every day. Guys, you got to wear, you always had to have on a tie and tie and dress shirt for class. You got to have a coat on for chapel.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Can I ask where you went?
Yeah, West Coast Baptist College in Lancaster, California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ours wasn't quite at that level, but I do remember. So before I got there, they did have, I want to say it was like khaki pants, collared shirt, anywhere, like any buildings on campus. And when I was there, you could do jeans and a t-shirt, but there were certain academic buildings that had their own standards.
Yeah.
I can't remember what all those standards were, but it had become like a little bit more relaxed when I went there.
Yeah. I mean, they had like guys and girls sit on the opposite sides of the auditorium. There was no
Oh, wow.
mixing of where you sit on the sexes.
Yeah.
Some of that's relaxed. But I graduated in 04. So
Okay.
that's been
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
And some of that has relaxed, though I haven't been back there in forever. I know they would not condone my smoking of cigars, and that's fine. I don't care. Biblically, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
As far as my conscience goes,
That's right.
And that's really the marker there. But there was no facial hair allowed.
Wow.
When I was there. So
there might have been things like that. Now that I think about it, I honestly I don't remember a ton of. There was like the rules, and then there was like the rules that were actually enforced, and those were oftentimes not the same thing. And
like
so,
what?
Yeah, like length of hair and stuff like that. I think, curfew is. We had a curfew. So we had guys and girls dorms that were separate. You had a curfew that I think was like 1 a.m. on the weekend.
Dude, that is so late.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays I'm like.
Curfew for us was like 10.
Okay, yeah. I think so it was different weekdays and weekends. And it was also the kind of thing where like, if you were out past curfew, you just didn't go back until the next morning.
Right.
You'd come in at 5 a.m. or something and you wouldn't get in any trouble. I think you just have to tell them where you were.
Yeah.
So it was like, you're going to get fined. It was a fine.
I was at the wharf all night.
Yeah, exactly. I was at the wharf the whole night. We smoked that place until it closed. No, it was the kind of thing you got charged like per minute past curfew or something like that.
What do they charge you?
Yeah, they like fined you.
Really?
Yeah, if you were coming back late. And so you're like, dude, I don't want a $30 fine. I'm just going to stay out all night and go sleep at a friend's house off campus.
Oh, that's crazy that they charge you. See, we were on like the demerit system.
Yeah.
And then we
had demerits as well, but I think this
I never heard of like charging people,
Yeah.
For being out past curfew.
Gosh, I could be misremembering this. If any of your listeners graduated from Cedarville University in the late 2000, early 2000s, 2000.
You're in so much trouble,
2012.
dude. I'm going to send this podcast link. I'm going to go to their website. I'm going to email the Spotify link to the dean.
Listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot has changed at Cedarville. I'm pretty sure most of the deans the year after I graduated, like you mentioned your alma mater has kind of since relaxed. Cedarville went the other way. So after I graduated, I think it was the next year that the president was let go, and I think maybe both vice presidents, and then it was like a ton of deans left.
Oh, dude, it was a total
department. It was like
change.
an overhaul. Yeah.
No, the place where I went, I'm sure they're still independent, fundamental, and Baptist, but some of that stuff is relaxed. I know, like they got rid of girls having to wear hose all the time. I don't know if they let them wear pants. They might. I don't know. I think guys can have facial hair now. But still, that's very mild.
Mm-hmm.
That's super mild. I was making waves when I started doing cool stuff back, like wearing bow ties. I'm always ahead of the curve, man.
Yeah, dude, you're on the bleeding edge.
Yeah, I am. So, but I'm like, Charles Spurgeon was a big cigar smoker.
Was he?
Be like Charles.
Yeah, that's right.
Smoke cigars.
That's right. Hey, speaking of cigars, what am I smoking here?
Yeah, man.
Lighter. Oh, it's Connecticut.
Yeah, that's a Connecticut wrap. You are smoking the Ferio Tego Metropolitan Connecticut. So that is
great.
It's a great cigar.
I mean, it's super mild.
Yeah.
But it's sunny, middle of the day-ish.
It's 1:11 p.m. right now.
Yeah. I feel like this is a great cigar for the time, at least for me. My palate.
For you, it's even like that would be a great cigar, 9 or 10 a.m. with a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Little splash of cream in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is a super mild, super creamy, easy smoke, Connecticut, USA wrap with Dominican binder and filler. So it's a really just relaxed, super chill cigar.
That's awesome. And what are you smoking? Yours is darker and it seems manlier.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's manlier, but it is darker. This is a CAO Nicaragua, which is a cigar that I really enjoy. It's more beefy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
It's Honduras wrapper and Honduras binder. And then it's got a 3-region filler from Nicaragua, the 3 main regions, Condega, Esteli, and Jalapa. So, it's just it's robust. It has spice to it.
Mm-hmm.
That Nicaraguan and Honduras tobacco is generally spicier.
Yeah.
Connecticut and Honduras are kind of relaxed.
Yeah.
So this one it's peppery. It's definitely toasty, maybe a little nutty. But I think it's great.
Yeah.
I really enjoy this. I like CAO cigars by and large, but I really enjoy the CAO Nicaragua. I want to jump back into seminary or Bible college for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Just because some thoughts that I have about it. So, did you meet your wife there?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Funny story. I knew of her my whole time there. Her and I both went to Cedarville in 2009, and I pretty immediately she stuck out to me. So Cedarville's relatively small. I want to say when I was there, it was like 3,500 students on campus.
Oh, dude, that's huge.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So mine, like ours, West Coast Baptist College is run by a local church, Lancaster Baptist Church, which was huge. It was a massive church, but whenever I was in school there was like a couple of hundred students.
Yeah, total.
So super small.
Yeah. No, this was this wasn't the kind of thing where you knew everyone, but you kind of knew of everyone. You recognize folks, but it was also super white. It was a conservative Christian school, so there was I think in our statement of faith there was really no room for it was a cessationist school. So if you had any kind of continuationist theology, believing in sign gifts and speaking in tongues, those kinds of things, you couldn't be at the school. And so you didn't have a ton of Black and Hispanic students. And my wife is half Chinese, half Puerto Rican, brown skin, beautiful. And so she stuck out pretty quickly when I got there. So I knew of her, but a buddy of mine was dating her for about a year and a half or so. And so that was bro rules, kind of off limits. They broke up, still in my book off limits, until he started dating somebody. And then I was like, okay, I think she's on the market now. He's in another relationship.
Sure, that's fair game.
Yeah, fair game. Senior year, we started dating.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I come from the school where, there are no more apostles. The sign gifts have ceased. Paul says, that they will, but that's all he says. He didn't say when they will cease. Right. And that's a whole, we can get into that if you want to. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. So I don't, the continuation of apostles or sign gifts or all kinds of things. So I'm from the cessationist school of thinking. Mm-hmm. That's how I was taught, of course.
Yeah.
And look, just to put it in context for you, I became a Christian December 19th, 1999. I was 20 years old. Okay. And then I enrolled and went into the fall semester of Bible college in the fall of 2001.
Okay.
So I was very young as a Christian. I didn't, what I had learned, I was taught by the pastor of the church where I became a Christian at. And so, I'm just gobbling up everything that is being spoon-fed to me. I hadn't learned critical thinking skills, and that's fine. That's where everybody begins, right? You don't know what you don't know, and somebody that knows more than you teaches you, and you just kind of give them the benefit of the doubt without even thinking about it in that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also like you don't know what you don't know, but I can't imagine going and being 20, so you've lived so much life without faith, and then to be introduced to Christian faith, I can't imagine having any kind of mental parking place for just how expansive Christian theology is and how many different viewpoints there are. So I'd imagine if somebody begins discipling me, investing in me, teaching me how to read the Bible, or telling me what the Bible says, I would just assume, well, that's what it says.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, but, so 4 years there, or 3.5 years there, from 2001 to 2004, I mean, I wanted to get out. So I took every summer and winter intensive that I could, so knocked it out. And then I pastored for 12 years in Southern California. And over that time, there's just a lot of personal and spiritual growth. And so I don't have the same views that I used to on a lot of things. Cigars are a big one. But it's just, I don't know. And then I went, so my original, where I was wanting to go back into seminary or Bible college or whatever you want to call it, because so I'm divorced and remarried, right? And I met my first spouse in Bible college there, and we got married in August of 2003, and then went through a divorce. And of course, this is not about the divorce, but this, I guess, plays into it. And I just was curious about your perspective, like the culture of the college that I went to. And I understand, I believe I understand what they're trying to do. They're, they're wanting their students and the parents that send their children there to have a godly environment, right? And they have certain standards, and you realize, obviously, if you understand the scriptures and even if you understand parenting, rules are for your protection. Yeah, you know what I mean? They're there to protect you. But on the other side of that coin, I just have this feeling that all of the 18 and 19 and 20 and 21-year-old boys and girls that are there, it's a bubble.
Yeah.
That's
totally.
not like, so the person that you are dating when you're in Bible college and you're both abiding under these rules that are foisted upon you, I don't know, there's part of me that feels like that's not the world that we live in. And is this person really who I'm seeing and who I'm getting to know? You see what I'm trying to say?
Totally. And you just... Yeah, I'm trying to think of how I would frame that, because I think if you went to a Christian university, anything like that, you probably know exactly what you're talking about. That feeling of the bubble, that like ecosystem that's created, maybe the good intentions that are behind it, but also I think some fear that's enmeshed around that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does to, like... what that does to a person's worldview and outlook. And then I think it creates this it can, I don't think it has to, but I think it can create a really fragile scaffolding that doesn't survive beyond the bubble.
Right.
It gives you this false framework for what life is like and what relationships are like. And then you go into the real world and you realize a lot of that stuff that was helpful then and maybe held you up there or allowed that seemed to work in that environment, it doesn't actually fit. And it doesn't hold up beyond that environment. And I think relationships, I think theology, doctrine, community, I think a lot of those things can change and shift. It doesn't have to, but I think it can.
Yeah. And I should let me just go ahead and say this, be careful to say, my divorce several years ago is not the college's fault. I'm just to say that. That's not what I was driving at. The divorce is my fault and it's my former spouse's fault. That's it. But sometimes I wonder, like, if they're, like I said, everything is just, I don't think artificial is the right word, but it's just you're in this environment where you agree to, if you're going to attend here, these are the rules and you have to abide by it. But that puts restrictions on who you actually are as a person.
Totally. Yes. Yeah, maybe tell me if this is what you're getting at. Does it create added pressure to present like this false self, or to even lean into a false self as opposed to a true self? Like, this is the kind of person that will be accepted in this environment because of these rules. And like, not just this is how I have to play ball, but this is the kind of person that is good and right and acceptable. And if I want to be right with God, right with my peers, accepted by my peers, this is kind of who I need to present as.
I mean, I suppose there's some of that. I don't know. It's a sticky wicket because
Sticky wicket.
Yeah, how about that?
I love
that. It's a quagmire, whatever you want to call it, because obviously we want to be beholden to the Holy Spirit,
mm-hmm.
and we want to be obedient to the Scriptures, right? Yep. So we should line up with those things. And then it's kind of like, I guess in a way, it's kind of like when you read, the Scriptures, and the Jews had all of their what we would call fence laws, more or less, right? Mm-hmm. We had all of the Old Testament laws, but the rabbis would create these extra laws that were not divinely given by God to keep you, like extra guardrails to even keep you from going close to
the things that you actually shouldn't
do.
The
things that you actually shouldn't do, right? But then those wind up being, as Jesus said, right? You teach for the commandments of men, or commandments of God, the doctrines of man.
Yeah.
And so the Bible college rules can wind up running in that same rate, like that same.
I think that's what I mean. Like, it creates expectations around not what is God's ideal for humanity, and it becomes, what do good, solid people do? And good, solid people, that's defined by the environment that you're in, the culture, the group of people who are there. And it's hard to say that community of people is accepting of someone who's not abiding by the things that they've said, you need to do these things while you're here. And so I do think it creates, like, I just know so many people who, in some of this, I think there's probably a ton of factors, right? But I know a lot of people who have walked through divorce, who have walked through pretty radical, I am kind of over the term deconstruction, but we'll say like fatal deconstruction. So not like a healthy version of deconstructing and reconstructing, but just deconstructing to the point of just saying, like, I've got to toss the whole thing.
You mean
just
you're talking about just getting rid of Christianity altogether? People that said they were Christians, but then bad experience or bad.
Just walked away from the whole thing.
Yeah, because of. They get disillusioned.
Yeah, and I think so many, like, I know so many people who have had those kinds of experiences that they would, at least, because again, I'm not gonna like speak from the outside in. I don't know what's going on in their heart. I don't know what was going on in the intricacies of their relationships, but they would draw like this direct thread to their experience in Bible college, more specifically in like a more fundamentalist sort of school environment. Yeah. Is that kind of what you're speaking to? Like, was it the nature of the Bible college you went to, or do you think it's just like Bible college in general? And
well, I don't know. It just depends. Like, everybody has standards.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Everybody has standards. Yep. Like, people gripe and complain about the independent fundamental Baptist church and their standards. Well, okay, let's say that you are you're just a non-denominational church, which might as well be a denomination by now. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, affiliated with XYZ network,
right?
But isn't a denomination.
Exactly. And you also have standards.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you're not gonna let somebody come to church nude. That's a standard.
Yeah.
So, like, just because somebody else's standards are quote unquote higher than yours don't make them bad.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess kind of what I was driving at was, like, do we think that seminaries and Bible colleges, while I understand the rules that are put in place there for protection and maybe, I don't know, for some character formation or character supplementation, are we really, it's just not the world that exists whenever they leave, when they get their degree and they leave.
Yeah.
And are they in for culture shock? Are they in for marriage trouble? Because then you get to really be who you actually are.
Yeah.
And now, I don't know, that's just, like I said, it's a sticky wicket. And I don't know that, I'm not saying that the rules at Bible college are wrong, not saying that, not trying to rip on Bible colleges. I'm grateful for them, although it's not really a biblical institution.
Right.
But I'm so grateful for them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think if I were to try and answer that, it would be, and the more that I think about it, again, I can't answer this for an institution necessarily, although I'll answer it the way that I answer it for our organization when it comes to like policies and stuff like that. So I think if you're a Bible college, you need to ask yourself, what are we trying to do? And then I think you have to start with your mission. And then I think you have to ask yourself, how much rigidity do we need in our statement of faith and doctrinal statement? Period. And I would say keep it as flexible as possible without compromising your mission. And then don't have any rules around conduct that go beyond the scope of your statement of faith or doctrinal statement. And if you do, just be honest about it. If you've got a dress code and that is a code of conduct or something, or some standard that goes beyond the scope of your doctrinal statement, just say, this has nothing to do with the Bible. We want you to dress for success. So when you're in our academic buildings, dress like you're, going in for a job interview, and you're going to be a head of the curve when you leave here. Like, that's totally fine. Do whatever you want. I don't care. But it's almost like be clear about what this is and what it isn't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just something I think about.
Yeah.
It's just it's something I think about from time to time, and I don't, like I said, I don't have any resentment or umbrage towards my alma mater for the rules that they have and the rules that they had when I was there. I guess this is just a part of critical thinking.
Yeah.
Thinking about that environment and the rules that were put upon us, which, by the way, we agreed to.
Yeah.
I said, okay, this is where I want to go. And they say, okay, if you want to attend here, here's the rules. You got, and if you're okay with that, then we'll let you come.
Yeah.
So there's, but I think about it from time to time.
Do you feel like there was anything, just as you look back at your life in particular, that gave you like a false impression? Like, was there one thing in particular that stands out to you, that that created that sort of culture shock when you left school, that you had to work through? Or do you feel like you
no,
critical things?
I don't, but I can remember a few things like here. So let me ask you, the school you went to, is it run by a church or is it its own organization?
So when I went there, I don't even think we were Baptist. I think it was not even affiliated with a denomination. And if it was so loose. Like the Bible department, when I was there, you had New Testament professors who were complementarian, others who were egalitarian. You had Old Testament professors who believed in a literal Adam, others who believed in a literary Adam. So it was like
That's a weird.
It was all over the map on that.
How do you get anybody to come out of there with a straight?
So they would have, I'm trying to think of like how it affected my experience. So I think their curriculum likely had to be approved by like department heads and stuff. But I just remember discussions in class.
Yeah.
Like that were really healthy.
Those are fun.
Yeah, like in worldview integration. I remember that class in particular talking about, I remember specifically that conversation around like women in ministry, and that most of the students came from more conservative backgrounds that didn't have as many categories for that. And I remember a professor would just like drop a little bomb, like somebody would say something where they were assuming a lot.
Yeah.
And the professor would be like, well, what about this? And all of a sudden it would kind of like shatter that person's paradigm a little bit, and it would instigate good
I can see why that's helpful.
Yeah, and I think so. I'm of the opinion, going back to your comment about like that's not really a biblical idea, like Bible college. I think I agree. Like I think typically Bible training took place in the context of an ecclesial body, a church.
Exactly.
And we've kind of merged academics and Bible training in ways that I think I wouldn't say are bad. They're just unique and maybe extra biblical. Not that extra biblical is always bad. But I think that because of that, I'm of the opinion that if you're going to be an institution that wants people to think critically, understand the scriptures, like you have to read widely and you have to have really good, hearty conversations. Otherwise, your legs get cut out from under you the second you graduate. And
it's like the people that only watch Fox News and never listen to CNN.
Yeah, that same kind of thing. But honestly, that's when you end up having these like pendulum swings that are really hard one direction or the other. I think part of that's just because people didn't have enough good, meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
Like if your ideas are challenged enough in a good, healthy environment that's like safe to have those kinds of conversations without abandoning orthodoxy, basic orthodoxy, then I think it gives you this wider view of the church to go, somebody might believe something that I don't, and they're still my brother or sister in Christ.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with that. And so when I hear this new idea that challenges an old idea, I don't have to toss the whole thing out, assuming that it was all bad or all wrong.
Yeah.
Because people for thousands of years have disagreed with each other.
Right. So, you know, like I said, our college was a ministry of this church.
Totally.
So this was the doctrine. This was it. Mm-hmm. All the professors, this is all independent fundamental Baptist. And by the way, for those of you who are listening and you're not down with this lingo, let me just say independent simply means each church is independent of itself. It's not part of the Southern Baptist Convention. It's not a part of a bunch of different churches that work together. It's a self-sustaining organization in and of itself. So that's the independent. The fundamental, we could get into a whole discussion on what fundamental means, but as far as I understand it, I mean, it's basically we believe the fundamentals of the faith of Christianity, that Jesus is the Christ, salvation is by faith through grace without works, and I could go on and on, But, however, in the current climate that we live in, independent fundamental Baptist is usually associated with places like Westboro Baptist Church that's awful, and they don't have to be. And by the way, like I have grown a lot in certain things that I believe, but I still consider myself an independent fundamental Baptist. That's what I believe. But as I mentioned earlier, we were cessation of apostles, cessation of sign gifts, pre-tribulation rapture. Just check off all the boxes, right? We had the Baptist acrostic. And see if I can remember. The Bible is the sole authority for all manner of faith and practice. Let's see if I can even remember this thing. B, what's the A? P is the priesthood of the believer. Like we don't need a priest like the Catholic Church. I am my own, I'm a priest and I go to the high priest, the Lord Jesus Christ. Individual soul liberty, salvation by grace through faith. There's a couple in there that I'm missing. I used to could name them all off, but so that was the doctrine. Yeah. There was no, like you said, we didn't have everybody that was teaching a class believed in a literal Adam.
Yeah.
Right. And so do I. And that's fine. And if you don't, well, I'm happy to have a conversation with you about what do you believe, by the way?
It's nuanced, but a literal Adam. Yeah.
What's the nuance?
The nuance would be are you familiar with John Walton? I think he's still a professor out of Wheaton, but he wrote a book called The Lost World of Genesis 1. He's written a number of books, but he is trying to remember his particular expertise. I want to say it's in Semitic languages, in ancient Near Eastern culture, but he basically argues that I would hate to butcher this because he's brilliant, but if you were to say, okay, give me the broadest brush stroke on how he looks at Genesis 1 and premise of that book, he doesn't believe it's a scientific book, and he would say that the ancient Near Eastern people weren't interested in questions that addressed science. Those are more post-Enlightenment questions and concerns.
Yeah.
And we read them back into the text. And so he would say,
good old eisegesis.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he would say, I think this was him, it might have been another scholar who says the matter doesn't matter. And so when it says God created, or this idea of making is less about material origins and it's more about meaning and ordering of creation. So the creation narrative is a story of God assigning meaning and purpose to the world and creating this cosmological temple, and it's all about God wants to dwell with humanity.
Yeah.
And that's what the story's about, and it was a competing cosmology or a competing origin story over and against other cosmologies that existed in Egypt or Mesopotamia.
Sure.
And it wasn't about the ordering of the creation of material things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So in that sense, sometimes you wonder, okay, well, what do you do with Adam and Eve, and are they a part of that cosmology story? Were they the first two humans to ever live, or were there other humans that existed outside of the garden? Is this a story about two historical figures named Adam and Eve? I think I'm somewhere there. I believe that Adam and Eve are historical figures, and who God created, who lived in harmony, walked with God in the garden, who were exiled from the garden. I don't think that that's the beginning of the story. I think that there was other stuff going on. And a guy named Gary Brashears has some other thoughts.
Yeah.
He's from Western Seminary on that.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I would just probably be your classical, Baptist that God made Adam and he was the first human being, and then God made Eve from him, and there was no other people.
Yeah.
They sinned in the garden. God kicked them out, and here we are. Because you do run into some, if there's other people, you run into some theological problems.
Well, but if there aren't, you also do.
How?
That's totally. So
how so?
Cain kills his brother,
Yeah.
and then is nervous that other people are going to kill him.
Yeah.
Well, who are those other people, and where did they come from?
Sure.
If he's the...
Yeah, well, they all came from, everybody came from Adam and Eve, and we don't know, God doesn't give us a timetable here. So when Cain kills Abel, it's not like they're 12.
Right.
You know what I mean? These are grown men. I've often wondered how many children Eve had.
Yeah.
She had to have a lot. Adam lived 969 years or something like that.
Yeah.
I think he was, next to Methuselah, I think he was the second oldest person ever. And so you can make a lot of babies
that's fair.
in 969 years, you know what I mean? And of course, people talk about, laws about marrying your sister and this and that and the other, which is true, but those laws don't come till later, which means before then it wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
It's not illegal.
There's a little leeway to populate the earth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the bigger problem you run into is that we all get our sin nature because of Adam.
Yeah.
Well, if you have all of these other people who are disconnected from him,
yeah,
why are they all, and they have no sin?
Yeah.
Why are they judged
That's
in
good.
the flood?
No, that's good. I wouldn't say that there were other people disconnected from the origin of Adam and Eve, but I would say that from creation, like a material standpoint, I don't think that the Garden of Eden, as we understand it from that Genesis 1, was the beginning of creation. So like angelic beings.
Oh yeah, well they were made on day 4 or 5.
So that's where I would say like, I don't know. I'm not sure that I would.
Somewhere, like, it is my opinion. No, because you're right. Genesis 1 does not declare for us on what day the angels came into existence. By the way, none of this was in the show notes, but I'm having a great time.
I know, likewise.
Yeah. Genesis does not declare for us when God made the heavenly host, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it is my personal position that I think pretty much, Job, there's that verse in Job where it talks about when the morning stars sang together and the sons of God shouted, how does it go? I might have to look it up. But it shouted, the morning stars sang together and the sons of God shouted for joy or something like that.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that they were witnesses to most of the creation.
Yeah, and even so, some people let us create mankind in our image. Mm-hmm. Some people read that as Trinitarian theology, a Trinitarian God using like
a plural language.
Plural language to describe creation. Being Father, Son, Holy Spirit, making humanity in their image.
Yeah, that's how I was taught.
And then some believe it is the like divine counsel, like God and his homies saying, which again,
interesting.
Yeah, and it's not that's not like an obscure. Only a handful of people believe that. There's like a fair amount of people who believe that. I think I have some questions and like would say I think that presents some theological issues, or specifically around humanity being created in the image of God. Let us create humanity in our image. Well, I don't see angelic beings as the image of God. I see that as something that's unique to humanity. And so
no, I agree with you.
Yeah. So anyway.
So what? But I missed it. What's the theological conundrum there?
If God is saying, if from the divine counsel standpoint, if people would say, yeah, that's God saying, let us, referring to the divine counsel,
like him and all the angels.
Yes. Create humanity in our image. Well, then it's like no, because then we would also be created in the likeness of beings other than God, but we are God's image.
That's correct.
So, but I'm sure there's I'm not the first person to ask that question. Sure. I'm sure there's good, hearty theological I'm
sure there is
arguments for it. But anyway, all that to say that there is I would say like a fair amount of scholars who believe that there were divine beings in existence prior to the creation story that we get in Genesis 1 and 2.
Well, obviously, there's no answer to that. And I've often wondered, like, and here's the thing that we as people cannot wrap around, or at least me, I struggle with this one. I can understand eternity future, Mm-hmm. I cannot fathom eternity past. Because everything now, since God made the heavens and the earth and all that in them is, and he set the sun and the moon and the stars for the times and the seasons, everything's on a clock. We all had a beginning. We all have an end. The sun rises, the sun sets, right?
Yeah.
But we know that God, from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. And that God he's the I am that I am. He's self-existent. Nobody, he is the, as it's been said, the uncaused cause, right?
I like that.
Yeah, God has no beginning. He just always was there.
Yeah.
And then at some, as you and I would describe, at some random point in time, he decides, all right, we're gonna make Earth
some random point in something, because time doesn't even exist.
Exactly. I was having a conversation. I said something years and years ago to my church secretary, And she died laughing because I'm so crazy. Because I said, before God created the heaven and the earth, there was nothing. But even nothing is something.
Yeah.
Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, my question is, like, how long was God around? And the answer is forever, before he decided to make, but there was no time.
Yeah.
There was no time. So it's just hard for me to comprehend. And what was happening before Genesis 1:1?
That's
Like, because I just imagine, like, God, quote unquote, floating in this blackness, in this black void. But where'd the black void come from?
right.
You know what I mean? He had to have made that. So it's just like, what's going on back there?
Yeah. Gary Brashears, you should look into it. I would hate to put words in his mouth.
He'll never hear this podcast.
No,
Don't worry about it.
You never know. You never know.
Hey, Gary, if you're listening, come on the show.
He does a lot of podcasts.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Me and Gary and Cam, and we'll sit down and we'll have a chat and a cigar.
I would love that. I don't know if he's a cigar guy. Maybe he is.
Cigar smoking is not required for my guests.
Got it. Well, he has some like really, really cool, interesting thoughts on what was going on before.
Where's he source this stuff from?
It's not original with him, but he's just, he's a Bible scholar.
Yeah, you find there's other verses in like Job and Psalms and places like that give you little nuggets that kind of you can cobble together.
And I think I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and even hearing about like the enemy was a liar from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
From the beginning, so God didn't create him evil. Like he was
He created Lucifer, who was good.
Good.
Yeah.
So, but then maybe it's when he says like from the beginning, does he mean like our beginning? And if so, then that means Lucifer's existence pre-existed us, which again, that's consistent with this creation narrative that you get. But I don't know. I'm okay with like the mystery of, in the same sense that I can't wrap my head around. Maybe this is the best way for me to summarize it. So in the same way that I can't wrap my head around eternity and the idea of God's like eternal existence, I am really, really comfortable with the idea that ancient texts written by ancient people were written in such a way that I don't plainly understand them necessarily, and I might be misreading that in like a plain reading.
That's a good humble way to approach Scripture. Yeah. Going back to something you said earlier about how these people they're not writing it for science, and they're not writing it for mathematics, and they're not writing it for, I don't know where I read this. It may have been in one of my, who knows? I've read so much and studied so much. But my position is basically that, look, the Bible is not a scientific book, but everywhere it speaks of science, it is correct.
Right.
You're right. It's not a historical book, though it contains history.
Yeah.
And everywhere it speaks, it's correct. And you carry that out, whether it's math or whether it's health or whatever.
Yeah.
The aim of the Scriptures, in my opinion, is basically it's special revelation. It is to reveal God to man.
Yeah.
And his plan for A, salvation, and B, how things are supposed to go.
Yeah. And I think like this might be helpful for listeners who aren't that familiar with the Bible, but I think sometimes we can say, okay, whether you say the Scriptures are inspired, or even if you go beyond that and say that they're infallible, to say, okay, whatever's in there is right.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly comfortable saying that. Whatever's in there is right. But but whatever is in there rightly interpreted is right.
That's the hard part.
And even like so take history, for example. Well, the way that ancient people talked about historical events is different than the way that we do. And so one of the issues that people have reading maybe even the Gospels, they go, there's so many inconsistencies in their timeline or in the way that this story is told, the facts of the story. It's like that's post-Enlightenment history. The things that we care about when we talk about history as a modern Western civilization is different than the way that they even told history and the things that they prioritized. It doesn't mean that it's not history or historical in its genre, but it's ancient history. It's the way that the ancient people used to tell history. So like they weren't as concerned about the sequence of events.
Yeah, like nobody had a problem with these things till like 1850.
Yeah. So like now, who are we to say? I think it's C.S. Lewis who called it chronological snobbery.
Yeah.
We just assume that the way we understand something is like the most enlightened way of understanding something and then critique everybody it's like thinking because something's old that they're dumb just because it's like way back then. And I think we just need to learn to read the scriptures with its authorial intent. Like, what was the author's intent? What was the author trying to communicate here? And I would say that with a ton of humility, because that I think is where the challenge is. Like, it's not always easy to know what was the author's intent in saying what they were saying, because I'm not culturally or historically positioned the way that they are.
No, that's fair. I mean, that's more than fair. I don't know how you can be more than fair, but it is. Like, you and I and everybody else listening to this podcast, by and large, you're an American. Odds are you're not a Jew. You live in 2025. And by the way, like, Jewish culture today, I'm sure, I know they have preserved a lot,
Yeah.
but there's no way it's exactly the same as it was in Jesus' day, much less Moses' day.
That's exactly right. And even the gap in time, just trying to think about like how much has the world changed in the past. And I know that it seems like it's exponential change with technology.
Yeah.
But like, how much has the world changed in the past 2,000 years? Well, how much do we think the world changed in the 2,000 years prior to Christ? So you can't even read those sections of scripture the same way, assuming that those who are like telling the stories or authoring the letter, or, you know, that they are concerned about the same kinds of things. There's just so much. Then when you mention like, okay, here's where we're culturally positioned today, and chances are you're probably not Jewish, and also chances are you're probably not an expert in like.
I'm not an expert in anything.
Greco-Roman culture, or like, yeah, you know what I mean?
I'm an expert in eating.
Hey, cigars.
I don't know if I'm an expert in cigars. I know a fair amount.
And when you were talking about your cigar, you were talking about 3 different regions in Nicaragua.
I
and
mean,
I was like,
I wrote it down and put it in my show notes, man. I don't have that stuff memorized. But memorization is not, that's a whole nother thing. You know, I think I've mentioned this before on a podcast with some friends from the Hill Institute, Brian Davis and Eric Cooperman. But it's just like, who's smart?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is it the people that do really well on tests because they do really well at memorization, or is it the people that can actually solve problems?
Yeah.
You know?
That's great. Yeah.
So anyway.
I like that.
Yeah. It's, I have not heard that quote from C.S. Lewis, but that's very enlightening.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, that's very good. That we are sitting here as 21st century Americans judging ancient historical writings by our modern day standards, you know. And I was reading an article the other day about originalism when it comes to interpretation of the Constitution.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, well, that same art, we talk about this ad nauseum when it comes to the scriptures.
It's hermeneutics.
Yes.
Yeah.
It 100% is hermeneutics. Like how you look at it, how you study it. Are you trying to understand the scriptures like currently, or are you trying to understand, like you said, what's the author's intent? What was the culture at the time? Who is speaking? To whom is he speaking? What was their background? What is, in understanding, and in my view, that is the proper way to read the scriptures, and then you extrapolate from there.
How do I lay that over my world today?
Yeah. I think we're probably simpatico in a lot of things.
Yeah.
I
think, absolutely. I mean, I think as I've gotten older, as I've read more and continue learning, my thoughts and opinions on certain things have changed, but like the basic tools that I take to the job are the same. It's just the framework maybe is the same, but the conclusions that I arrive at, and specifically the application that I arrive at, oftentimes is different.
Well, and if you're going to be a Christian, like you have to, and if you're going to be a Christian, and if you're going to be a studious one about the scriptures, you even have to be on guard about that, because you can wind up in the place where you're just strictly in the scriptures for knowledge, and forget about actually letting it transform your life and living for God.
Yeah.
There's a delicate balance there, because God wants you to live for him and wants you to serve him. And at the same time, we have to remember, one of the prophets where the Lord said, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
So we have to balance. I remember a pastor friend of mine reading a quote from some guy who I couldn't even tell you, but it's just one of those things that stuck in my mind. A guy with a lot of education, I'm sure has multiple PhDs by his name, has written a lot of books, a lot of commentary stuff. And he said, the guys like us who do this stuff, we have to sit back and ask ourselves the question with all of our study and writings, are we actually even helping anyone?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like
it's a valid question.
Yeah. And I mean, was it Paul who said all of the law and the prophets hang on this commandment to love? And there's something really profound about that. And obviously, like, Christ affirmed the same thing, and that wasn't a new idea. I think Jewish people, Hebrew people understood that in their day, but Christ came full of grace and truth.
Love that verse.
Yeah.
John 1.
Yeah, John 1. He wasn't half and half. He wasn't a little more one than the other. Somehow full to the brim of grace without sacrificing an ounce of truth. And so both really matter. And I think both of those things together, that's the like cocktail that is love in the mystery of it. It's not just this like cliche. It's not, and at the same time, grace is a scandalous thing that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And anyone who's received that, it's hard not to just be like overwhelmed by it, and I think all of us need a whole lot of that.
Yeah. A whole lot of grace. You have to understand, I guess I'm speaking in salvific terms now, but you have to understand what you are, not who you are, but what you are, in order to be in the position to receive grace.
Yeah.
Because if you don't realize that you're lost, and that's that's a term I used to use all the time in preaching. It just means if you're not saved, if you are without Christ and without God and without hope, that's Ephesians 2. It's what I call the trifecta of, it's like the trifecta of spiritual depression. They were without Christ and without God and without hope in the world.
Yeah.
So if you're not a Christian, you're not a born again person, as John 3, Jesus would say to Nicodemus, you do not believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, he's God in the flesh, crucified for our sins, buried and resurrected 3 days later. Like, if you don't believe that, then that is what we as Bible believers would say, that's a person who is lost.
Mm-hmm.
And until you understand that you're lost, you don't know that you need grace. But whenever you get there and you understand how gross, how holy God is and how righteous he is and how loving he is and how your sins have separated you from him and were the whole reason for the sacrifice of Christ, then it's overwhelming. And I tell you what, in my humble opinion, it's even more overwhelming after you become a Christian and you love God and you try and serve him. And even after salvation, you do something royally stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, royally stupid.
Yeah.
Then it's a lot.
Yeah. But I think that's also where, John talks about this in 1 John, like 1-3. I've been
chapters 1-3.
Yeah. Chapters 1-3. There's just this like weird paradox where he's talking about becoming like someone that you're spending so much time with, but then he's also talking about how we're all sinners, and anybody who says that they don't sin is a liar.
Mm-hmm.
But then he just talks about like almost, it's like he's taking it to the extreme where he's like, listen, if you're in Christ, you're just not going to keep on sinning. You make a practice of sinning and like you're not of the Father. And you almost read that and you're like, ah, crap, dude. Like, because I keep on sinning. And it's this like juxtaposition of, yeah, if you like give the Lord the bird and just are like, I'm living life the way that I want to live it and presume on grace and say like, God's got me, but like I've got my life. You really don't actually know. You don't to your point, like you don't know where you were. You didn't know that you were lost, and you haven't probably experienced grace. But when you have experienced grace and you still royally screw up, which we all do, what an experience to be able to go back to God and experience just not even hesitation in God's embrace of us. Not even this like, let me think about it, but just unwavering commitment to us because of God's commitment to himself to keep a promise that he made with us. Like that's nuts.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's found this side of heaven. Like
No.
you're not going to find that anywhere else other than God. I think one of the things that's encouraging, I think that we are in a cultural moment where more and more people are beginning to realize that they're lost. They just don't know where home is, and they don't know what it means to be found. But there seems to be this like leaning into spirituality and mysticism and magic, even like this desire to re-enchant the world.
Yes.
Because people are like,
the current system's not working.
Naturalism ain't it. Secularism, it's not it. And I don't think I can find these answers within myself. And I'm going to try and find something that can re-enchant the world, or that can spark my life with hope or with meaning, with significance. And it's got to come from somewhere other than me.
Yeah.
And they're searching for that. And I think there's like, the world is ripe with opportunity to point people towards where they can find that grace that I think everyone's looking for, find the truth that I think if everyone's honest with themselves, they're looking for, and the hope that all of us desperately need if we're going to continue on in a life that's
people are looking for something. People have always been looking for something.
Yeah.
I don't know how hard they're looking for it though. But they're looking, but
I tend to think people look pretty hard. I think they look in the wrong places, and I think it ends up being really foolish ultimately. But I think that's
they do. There's a place in the Old Testament. I think it may be in Jeremiah. I have no idea. I'd have to go back and look. I just know it's there, where it talks about they're always looking because they ran after things that do not profit.
Yeah. Turn over one rock, that ain't it. Go to the next.
Pretty
one.
much. Yeah. And I want to speak on something that you brought up a minute ago in 1 John, because I have experience. I won't speak to the what's, but I'll speak about it. You're talking about, well, I just keep sinning. well, crap,
Yeah.
and Proverbs, Solomon writes in Proverbs, and he says that the iniquity of the wicked shall take the wicked himself, and he shall be holden with the cords of his sins. Sin is binding.
Yeah.
It will wrap you up. It will put you in a cycle, and you will be stuck there. And if you are a Christian, right? If you are a believer, and you get in that spot, the way I have felt when I was in it, and the way I look at it is this: obviously, it's wrong. It's not okay. This is why Jesus died. But you can be stuck there and hate it. Because I was. You know you're doing wrong, and you do it for whatever reason, and you hate it. I'm skeptical and worried about the person who says that they're a Christian and they're fine with it.
Yeah.
James says that if you receive no chastisement, then are you bastards and not sons?
Yeah.
What son is he whom the Father chasteneth not?
Yeah, it doesn't discipline.
If you say you're a Christian, but you live in continual sin and you have no compunction, no remorse, no conviction about it, probably want to double check that relationship.
Yeah.
With the Lord.
Yeah.
But anyway, man, we got to move on, or we're not going to get into.
This was great. I didn't signing up for this today, but
I didn't either. Because, like I said, none of this was in the show notes. But this has been super fun.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, we're going to do really quick is let me run an ad for the cigar box really quick, and say to the listener to imagine this in your mind's eye: a custom-built teardrop-style cigar trailer, a literal humidor on wheels arriving directly at your location. The cigar box brings an unparalleled experience of refined indulgence to any gathering. We offer a meticulously curated selection of premium cigars, expertly maintained and presented in an atmosphere of classic elegance. Our knowledgeable host, yours truly, is on hand to guide your guests from seasoned aficionados to curious newcomers, ensuring a personalized and memorable journey into the world of fine cigars. Perfect for weddings, corporate events, private parties, or any occasion where you desire a distinctive and upscale amenity. Let the cigar box transform your event into an unforgettable affair. Book your mobile cigar bar event today by visiting mobilecigarbox.com. Fill out the booking inquiry form, and I will be in touch with you as soon as possible. Also, if you've not heard about the GoFundMe I set up to help my wife's medical recovery, and if you'd like to help us out, I would be grateful. Visit GoFundMe and search Support Jennifer Stewart's Medical Recovery. The link will be posted in the show notes, and it's also in my bio on my social media profiles. All right, let's take a quick break. We're going to move this umbrella to the other side, and then we'll get back into it. We'll be back in just a second. All right, we are back. Umbrella has been moved for shade. Water has been refilled. So before we're going to move on from the scripture. That was a fantastic talk. But right here in the show is where I ask people to let us know about their business, what they do, how people can follow you on social media, blah, blah, blah. But you've got so many irons in the fire.
Yeah.
That I feel like it might be a little bit easier if I just kind of list them one by one, things you shared with me.
Yeah.
And you can kind of break it down for us.
Yeah.
So you are the executive director of Lead Collective.
That's right.
Right. I think, which you mentioned at the beginning. So what is the Lead Collective?
Yeah. So the Lead Collective is a collection of nonprofit ministries. Technically, Lead Collective is one nonprofit with 3 different subsidiaries or like ministry programs. They're DBAs of Lead Collective.
Yeah, okay.
But they function like separate nonprofits.
So they each have their own specific mission?
Yes, that is working towards a larger, greater mission.
Okay.
So our mission at Lead Collective is like we exist so that youth in under-resourced communities and specifically middle and high school students will experience the love of Jesus, escape poverty, and flourish for generations to come. Every ministry of Lead Collective is working towards that end, but they play a unique role. So we would say, like, if you're going to address something as insidious as poverty, and pursue something as expansive as flourishing, that's not like a one side, there's no magic bullet solution to that. And so it's not even a three-tiered approach that's going to just solve that, but we take three approaches that are addressing different aspects of poverty and flourishing, all that are ingrained with gospel centrality and relationships that are shaped by the gospel, shaped by Christian community, so that students can experience the love of God. They can hear specifically about the good news of Jesus, and an aspect of poverty can be addressed, and an element of flourishing can be provided. So the three ministries that are underneath Lead Collective are, one, GOAT, which stands for Great Outdoor Adventure Trips. So like right now, while we're talking, there are probably a dozen students going mountain biking near, we call it our SWU mountain biking trip. So it's near Southern Wesleyan University.
Okay.
And there are mountain biking trails out there. And so we're taking a group of students on a mountain biking adventure. And it's like proper mountain biking, single track mountain biking trails on nice hardtail mountain bikes. And it's a guided adventure. And on that, we'll take students from the city here on that mountain biking trip. They'll have an opportunity to hear kind of parable style about God's kingdom and about the good news of Jesus while they're in the mountains, in the woods.
So you take youths on trips like this, and then y'all do whatever, and then obviously you stop and we have some time spiritually and talk about X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, eat a meal together.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is we are a ministry to other ministries. So GOAT, this is honestly, going back to Spurgeon.
Yeah.
Pastored in London, right?
Yep.
And
Metropolitan Tabernacle, I've been there.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Freaking awesome.
That is awesome. So correct me if I'm wrong. I think he said he wanted to pastor a church or be a part of a church that if it were to go away, London would weep, or the city would weep. And I think you want people who aren't just a part of that church to feel the impact of that faith community. And I want that for GOAT. If GOAT were to close its doors and go away, I truly believe Greenville County would weep.
Yeah.
Because every summer we serve between 15 and 16 different nonprofits who are doing incredible work week in and week out, serving under-resourced middle and high school students. So what we do, we partner with those organizations and we say, hey, we would like to provide for you free of charge 4 to 5 guided outdoor adventures for your students and your leaders so that y'all can have this unique shared experience that you can connect through, that can springboard you into deeper relationships.
Man, if I had something like that when I was pastoring for the teens in our church, because it's always an expense. It's an expense to the church, an expense to the parents, and they're already, tithing or whatever they're doing, and they've got their life. And so if an organization come alongside and said, hey, we want to provide 4 to 5 free of charge to you and your kids, dude, that's immeasurable.
And it's this isn't cheap stuff.
No.
If you want to go on a guided climbing trip, you're talking over guided rock climbing, guided mountain biking, that's over $300 a person through some guiding agency. We can do it for $210 to $220 per student, but that's
still a lot of money for 12
still a lot of
kids.
money. And we'll take 400 to 500 students on outdoor trips this summer. And so it's a big expense.
Yeah.
It's privately funded through really generous supporters who believe that, one, there's an intrinsic benefit to just getting unplugged from your phone, getting outside in the midst of God's creation where you can connect with God. There's something valuable about overcoming adversity and doing something hard in the mountains that helps you grow as a leader, there's an opportunity, again, for these great ministries and after school centers and like all of these great orgs that are working with students to be given an opportunity to have an experience that they can connect with students over. And then there's these really cool talks where the gospel is being shared that serve as great primers for conversations that leaders can have with students throughout the summer and throughout the school year as they're working with them. And then throughout the year, that same ministry does adventure-based mentoring several days a week for a group of 12 students. And so that's during the school year. And then in the summer, we, from those students who are part of that adventure-based mentoring group, they can apply to be a junior guide. And then we train them, hire them during the summer, and then they guide outdoor trips for their peers. And then we also hire college-aged summer guides, train them in wilderness first aid and guide training, and then they guide these trips with us.
That's awesome. Because you're helping these kids have a good time, but then you're turning around for some of the older ones and giving them purpose, giving them purpose, giving them some spiritual responsibility.
That's right. And just like, practical responsibility on it's a job. So show up at a certain time, you're loading gear up,
right?
You're having to read a map and lead a trip. And like we've got 2 junior guides. We usually only do 2 because we want for everyone we've got a relatively small staff team, and for everyone who interns with us or is a summer guide with us, we don't want it to be just them pouring themselves out. We really want to invest in them. And so for all of our junior guides, they do, I think it's 2 hours, maybe 3 hours a week of leadership development where we invest in them. And it's hard to really invest in people relationally if you've got a ton of them for a staff our size. And so we keep it to 2 junior guides, and then we've got 6 college-age summer guides. But together, they just form this really cool community where not only are we investing in young people throughout our city, but we get to invest in, we spent the first 30 minutes of this podcast talking about the formative years of like young adulthood when you're in college. Yeah, we get to invest in that age group of people who are coming to as missionaries in a sense, because they're raising a lot of their support. They get a stipend from us, but we invest in them just because we care about who they are, who they become, and this summer has a lot to do with that. Yeah. So,
before we get into the other things, if people are interested in checking out Lead Collective, like what's the website? How can they follow you guys on social media, all that stuff?
Yeah. So leadgvl.org. So leadgvl as in like Greenville.org is our website. And then we've got Goat GVL is the ministry that I just mentioned. And eliasgvl.org and Reach GVL, and I'll talk about Elias and Reach here in a second. Yeah. And then I believe it's the same for all of our social media. Okay. Like Goat GVL, Lead GVL, Elias GVL.
Yeah, I went to the website earlier and I noticed there's links to all of them on Lead GVL, so you can get to any of them by just going to the main one. Okay. And I don't know, did you not know that? Did you not do that?
I knew that, but, those things get updated, and I'm not always like...
Yeah, that's not really your job. Updates. You've got other things that, as the executive director, that's something that you delegate to your
We just got people who are better at it than me.
Yeah, no, look, I understand doing all the things that I do. I have to do all this stuff, and I wish I had somebody to just take care of it for me. But, I don't have money to pay somebody to do that. So
someday.
Yeah, one day, someday, we'll see. But, no, Goat sounds super fun.
Dude, it's a total blast. And that was my foot in the door with all of this. So like Lead Collective didn't exist 10 years ago. So I moved to the upstate in 2012 and I found Goat because they used to run a climbing gym called Mountain Goat. And I was a rock climber. And so I was looking up a climbing gym, stumbled upon Goat, discovered this ministry.
Oh, it was already in existence?
It was in existence. Okay. Yeah, it founded in 2009 by a guy named Ryan McCrary. And there's a long kind of backstory as to why he ended up starting it. Yeah. But I got connected there, and I moved to Greenville to be a part of a church that was planting churches. And I knew it was going to be this bivocational thing. And so I was looking for a full-time job. I was working at Starbucks, climbing at the climbing gym, and then they offered me a job. So I worked full-time at GOAT for 4 years, and I was part-time at this church and called Summit Church. And I'm not there anymore. I'm a part of a church plant now, but love the folks over at Summit Church. And I was there at GOAT full-time, part-time at the church, and then my wife and I started Elias. And I'll tell you why in a second, but when we did that, it was like we discovered that we were pregnant with our first, which was not the plan. And we had just started this ministry. I was preaching a few times a month at the church. I was working full-time at GOAT. It was just like my wife was working full-time. It was just too much. And we were praying about what thing the Lord was calling us to let go of. And obviously it wasn't our kid. It wasn't this new ministry that we had founded.
It wasn't the kid. Loved it.
Praise the Lord. MJ, our oldest, is just the sweetest. Anyway, it wasn't Elias, this ministry that we had just started, and I loved GOAT, but I felt like the Lord was saying, I want you to use your gifts to serve the church, and I don't want you to step away from that. And so my wife and I prayed one night that an opportunity would come about at the church for me to go full-time, and that we prayed about that on the way to small group. I don't think we mentioned it to anyone. The next day, 2 of the elders at our church asked if I could meet for coffee. A few days later, I met with them, and they offered me a full-time job as a campus pastor at the church. And I was full-time at the church for 4.5 years, and then stepped back in order to start Lead Collective. So to go kind of back to that beginning, I was working full-time at GOAT. And one of the students that we were working with, who was a part of our like year-round program, was a kid who lived in my neighborhood, and his name was Deontay. And so I live in a neighborhood called Nicholtown. If you're in the Greenville area, you probably know about Nicholtown, but low-income community that's experienced a lot of...
Houses are expensive there now, man.
Now they are. Yeah, exactly. Depending on where you are, it may or may not be low income. There's a lot of affordable housing that's still in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But anything that wasn't designated affordable housing, or that isn't just like super run down, and even a lot of the stuff that is super run down, landlords are just like jacking up the rent. But a lot of those houses that were great starter homes for families that used to be like $500 a month for rent or something like that, that were simple and small. You'd have either young families in them, or you'd have elderly folks in them. A lot of those were just purchased by developers, flipped, and now rent went from literally overnight. Like, people were evicted, and then overnight it went from like $500 a month or $600 a month for rent to like them trying to get $2,000 a month for rent. So the neighborhood has experienced a lot of that, but there's still a fair amount of affordable housing apartment complexes in the neighborhood. And so, but we moved there in 2013, and one of the students that we were working with at GOAT was coming from Nicholtown, and he would skateboard to the climbing gym and like help belay students and just hang out with us, just kind of searching for community, something to do. And then at night, I would give him a ride home because we lived in the same neighborhood and I didn't want him skateboarding home at night. And we'd talk about life and plans for the future. And he was 14 or 15 at the time. He ended up getting arrested and going to jail for about a year. Got out of jail, shot and killed a police officer, and then took his own life. And it was a really big story in Greenville, and it was just devastating all around. I remember going to both funerals, and I think sometimes in life we try to create really simple narratives to help us cope with the complexity of human brokenness and sadness, and we create heroes and villains, and I think that can sometimes make us feel better about a situation. And it just wasn't simple. Like, this young man's life was really, really complicated and difficult. And the story even behind that, of why he was ever locked up to begin with, was really complicated and full of injustice. And you go to this, like you go to both funerals and you're just sad. You know, you see a wife and kids who no longer have a dad and your heart just breaks. And you see this young person in a box that you remember them like skateboarding to go belay and serve elementary age kids. And you just think, man, I'm never going to have another conversation with him. And all of it just breaks your heart. And I remember having a meeting with several people who were involved in that young person's life, kind of in peripheral ways. So like Goat, we knew him because he would come to the climbing gym and we invested in him that way. There was another pastor in the neighborhood who was the executive director of a community center, and they didn't have any programs at the community center, but he would sometimes come by and he just kind of knew of him. And that was the church that hosted like a vigil for him afterwards. And then he was a part of a bike club called Momentum Bike Clubs, and the director of bike clubs met, and all three of us got together and we were just talking about like not like, well, what did we do wrong? Where did we fail him? It wasn't that, but it was just like, what else could we have done? And if we could go back and do anything differently, would we? And just one of those, you know? And my wife and I just felt like there's not necessarily something in the neighborhood that is neighborhood-based, community-based, that is enmeshed in the life of a young person, but not just a young person, but their whole community, you know? Because it's one thing to like work with someone. It's another thing, like that kid's always going home and they're always going back into the same neighborhood, and their environment, if that's not being redeemed and transformed, and if the kingdom isn't expanding into that place and changing it, then it's not impossible, but boy, it's tough.
Look, man,
to see a person make it through that.
Not to go back to the scriptures, but here's a thought that I used to have all the time when I was pastoring and preaching. Like, when I go to church, I am there for spiritual instruction from the scripture. And I'm there to worship. I understand that. I'm there to worship collectively with the body of Christ, worship the Lord Jesus Christ to the glory of God the Father. But to me, the main thing at church is the preaching. And I've thought so many times, as the pastor, as the preacher, like it is so important to have studied well and developed a proper sermon and be in tune with the Lord and what is to be said, because I have got about 45 minutes 2 to 3 times a week with you to expound to you the Word of God. That's it.
Yeah.
An hour, like an hour and a half to 2 hours and 15 minutes a week.
Yeah.
Versus all the other time you spend at home and at work and in your house and with your friends and in leisure time. The amount of time that we do spiritual things at church is so minimal on the scale.
Yeah.
That, like you said, if we can work, not just like investing in an individual is great, but if we can somehow impact that community, it's a bigger yield.
Totally. And I think in part, it's the same kind of question. The answer or solution is a bit different in the context of church.
Sure. I was just giving an analogy.
Well, I was going to say, I actually still have that that question that you, and almost the problem that you raise, that like ache, intention resonates so deeply with me pastoring today, because you mentioned like, man, an hour and a half, 2 hours and 15 minutes a week. That is like, I can't imagine having that much time with folks. You know, now I feel like it's 35 minutes, 2 or 3 times a month.
I used to preach long.
Yeah. But still, even like midweek Bible study, so much of that is like gone in many contexts, not in all, but there, to your point, there's so much opportunity for counter formation.
Yes.
And by the world and by bad ideas, not good ideas, and by bad practices, not good practices, that are changing us, that are affecting us. It's not just stuff we're doing, it's stuff that's doing something to us. And the same question is like, how do I either get more time with folks, or how do I equip them to practice things that are going to spiritually form them into the likeness of Jesus, in an environment full of idols where there's opportunity to be counterformed around every corner. Well, we're asking the same kind of question, but for young people in this neighborhood who probably they're getting 0 minutes of time in a church. Maybe they're never going to church. Maybe they're going with grandma for major holidays,
Christmas,
but
Easter, yeah,
exactly. Maybe Mother's Day or something, but it's not, it pales in comparison to what they need. And it was the same kind of question, and it was also, how do we, in an environment that has been formed by history, by injustice, by poverty, by bad behavior, by all of these things. Like, there's a lot of factors that have contributed to an environment being destructive, dysfunctional, chaotic. How can we be a part of something that can change that environment slowly over time to where it begins to reflect the kingdom of heaven more than the kingdom of darkness?
Yeah.
And I think all of us want that in every space that we're in. We want it at home, we want it at work, we want it in the world, but it's the prayer,
Yeah. So that's like the the question with no good answer that Elias was born from.
Yes. Yeah. And it was, so I read Tim Keller's book on prayer. And while I was reading it, he talked about, I think it was Martin Luther, who had this practice of praying the Lord's Prayer twice a day. And I was just challenged that I want to pray it twice a day, in the morning and in the evening, and I'm going to personalize it. And so this, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done in Nickeltown as it is in heaven, is just the way I began praying that. And I would pray it from my study, which looked into one of those low-income apartment complexes. It's an apartment complex everybody calls Fieldcrest, but that's the old name. And then it was Jesse Jackson Townhomes, and now I think it's called Heritage at the Green. I don't even know what it's called because no one calls it that. Everyone just calls it Fieldcrest still. But I was looking into that apartment complex, praying, your kingdom come, your will be done in Nickeltown as it is in heaven. And just that stirred my imagination. What would it look like? It's one thing to say that could be just Christianese, but what does that actually mean? What would it look like if God's kingdom was coming to earth? What if his will was being done on earth as it is in heaven? What would that actually look like?
That's kind of the plan.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, but what does it practically look like?
Exactly. And that's where it's I mentioned bringing the same tools to the party, but oftentimes arriving at different conclusions. And it's God's not parachuting us out of this place. This wasn't plan A that he's crinkling up and tossing. It's he's making all things new.
One of my favorite quotes is from Adrian Rogers.
Okay.
Who said, that is, oh, dude, he's, I think he was president of the SBC a couple of times, but just a great communicator. But he said, salvation is not getting man out of the world and into heaven. Salvation is getting God out of heaven and into man.
That's so good. And I would say into the world.
Yeah.
There's this, it goes back to, the story starts off, going back to our original conversation, it starts off with God dwelling with man in a garden. It will end with God dwelling with man in a city. And that's what we're moving towards. And so what would it look like if the kingdom of God were in this place? What things would kind of go away? What things would appear that aren't here right now? And as we began asking those questions, it was like, okay, let's start with one thing, and that's relationships and developing authentic relationships and pursuing racial reconciliation through relationship. And so we decided to start playing basketball. My wife and I both play basketball. She's better than I am. Like anybody who's a part of our organization.
I took my wife to Topgolf the other day.
Okay.
You know, she's now severely handicapped.
Yeah.
She beat me. I got beat on this game by a stroke victim at Topgolf. So don't feel bad.
Okay, I don't. But so my wife is able-bodied, an incredible basketball player, but she has beaten me 6 years in a row in a free throw contest. I mean, I'm
6 years running.
Okay,
I only lost one game.
Yeah.
At Topgolf.
Listen, 6 years running, and I'm doing my very best. I'm trying not to give her an inch. And
Man,
this past year,
that's hard on the masculinity.
yeah, it is. It's tough. It's tough, but this year I shot 90 out of 100 free throws. 90% shooting 100
Dude, that's a
free
wild
throws straight. She shot 92.
Are you
Like,
serious?
I'm telling you, man, it's less about me, it's more about her. And so she's solid.
Money.
Yeah, she is.
Taking it to the bank.
But we were like, listen, we've been playing basketball in the neighborhood. We've developed relationships that way. Let's start doing open gym. The community center said, hey, we've got students who want to be around here, but we don't have any programs. We don't have funding for programs. So if you guys can develop something, you can host it here. And so we started a DBA under GOAT. So it was GOAT DBA Elias, and started playing open gym basketball. We'd feed students, work on homework, and talk about Jesus. And the way we talk about Jesus was Q&A. So we just say, and we called it like Q&R, question and response. We don't promise to have all the answers, but we'll do our best to respond to the questions you have. If you've grown up in the buckle of the Bible Belt, you've probably heard about Jesus. You've heard about church, the idea of the gospel. But there's probably a lot of false assumptions that maybe you have. There's probably a lot of questions that you have that you're not given space to ask, questions that are off limits when you're at church. Just ask them, what do you care about? And how can we connect with you around God through the lens of your questions? And so we started doing that, just building relationships, discovered students who had really, really good questions, and students who wanted to live life on purpose. And so that led us to doing what we call the LEAD project. There's a guy named John Perkins who's done a bunch of community development work in Jackson, Mississippi. He's still living, but is in, I think, his late 90s. And we had just read a bunch of John Perkins and modeled much of our ministry off of his work. And he said one of the first things you need to do when you start doing any kind of community development work is leadership development. You've just got to try and work yourself out of a job, raise up leaders from the community that you're serving in. And that's very similar kind of mindset to the folks from like When Helping Hurts and folks at the Chalmers Center who have talked about sustainable community development practices and how do you do that with a biblical worldview. And so we're like, all right, we're going to start the LEAD project, which was just dinner at our house on Wednesday nights with students who wanted to live life on purpose. And we talked about what does it mean to like follow Jesus and lead like Jesus would lead at home and at school and in your neighborhood. And from there, we found there's a bunch of students who really want to live life on purpose, who they're not succeeding in school. And we need to help more with like the practical kind of social implications of education and just helping them with homework and making sure they graduate from high school. And so we started a tutoring program, which was just kind of a flop. And all of us were volunteers, and for about 4 years. And eventually we hired a full-time staff. It was our first full-time staff member, and we asked her to take the tutoring program and run with it. And she turned it into a full after-school program that went from 4 or 5 students that were coming regularly a few times a week to close to 50 over the course of about a year and a half. And it was just, now all of a sudden they're coming 4 days a week. And it was just a full service program. And it grew, and we ended up purchasing a facility that was like a $500,000 facility. we had when we purchased it was in 2019, we had no full-time staff. And this was before we had hired that person. We hired that person because her name's Grace. She's still with us. And we're like, we hired her because we had just purchased a building, and we're like, we have to steward this well. But somehow we raised like $200,000 to purchase that facility, and we hadn't done hardly any fundraising before, ever, because it was just volunteer. It was this like passion project. My wife and I both still had full-time jobs, and the Lord provided in like miracle after miracle after miracle. I mean, it's nuts. But that's like a separate podcast.
That's totally cool. I want to stop you here and ask you a question. What does Elias mean?
Yeah.
And where did you come up? Why was the name for that chosen for this?
Yeah. Okay. So it's the Greek word for mercy.
Okay.
And it's found in a few.
You think I should know that?
No. You're good. It's found in a few places in the scriptures. Ephesians 2, God is rich with mercy, with which He loved us.
My favorite chapter.
So good
of the scripture. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah. It's the answer to, what did you call it? The spiritual depression that you.
Yeah, that's like Ephesians 2:18 or 16, something like that.
Yeah.
Trifecta of spiritual depression.
That's right. Yeah. This is the solution. But God,
Yes.
And
for His great love wherewith He loved us.
Yeah.
Such a good
rich in mercy. And we're like, man, this is this like commodity that God spends on us, or currency that God spends on us, that He's like He's loaded. He's rich.
They're new every morning.
Every morning, because He knows we need it. And but it's also in the story of the Good Samaritan, where Jesus is asked, what's the greatest commandment? And He's like, well, you know it. And it's, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And He's like, well, who is my neighbor? And then He tells the
wanting
story.
To justify himself.
Trying to justify himself. And He's like, well, who's my neighbor? Like, who do I actually have to love as I would love myself? Does that include Gentiles? Does that include people I don't like? Like, how do I make that category of people as small as possible? Because you're telling me I'm committed to offering them something that is really, really like deep and hard to do.
Like the screaming purple-haired LGBTQ Democratic, just socialist.
Fill in the blank. Whoever that is for you. Like what? Whoever it's hard to love. Yes. Who is that? Who's my neighbor? And Jesus tells this story, and it's full of traditional heroes that they're not villainized, but they certainly don't win the day in the hero category. And he goes, well, he tells the story. Samaritan is the good guy in this. And then he flips the question and sends it right back to the guy who asked him, the lawyer. And he said, who was a neighbor to the person in need? And it's not who is my neighbor as in the burden of someone belonging to that category is on them. He said, who proved to be a neighbor to the person in need? In other words, the burden is on you. Who are you willing to be a neighbor?
In other words, neighbor is a verb. It's not a noun.
Exactly. And so we were like, you know what? This is a neighborhood ministry, and we don't know exactly what we're going to do yet. We're praying, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We don't have a master plan. It wasn't written on it. We didn't have a theory of change at the time.
You mean you didn't have a big whiteboard and you're just like drawing out ideas?
Nope. It was just, what is the flavor of all of it? What do we want to color this whole thing with? And what do we want people to feel when they experience anything that we do? We want them to feel mercy. And so is Elias. I'll say this, I don't recommend naming a ministry after a Greek word because it will be pronounced a zillion different ways.
Well, nobody knows what it means.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but it ends up being a kind of a cool conversation.
It's a good segue. I mean, so there's value to it because people are going to want to know what it is, and that gives you an easy way to talk about the mercy of God.
Yeah. That's right. And it was earnest. That's one thing I come back to. I'm like, we really cared about the significance of it behind it. And so anyway, we start that ministry, and 4 years later-ish, This is 2019. We purchased that building, and the board of GOAT is like, hey, Elias is growing. They just purchased this facility. People are donating. They're getting tax receipts from Great Outdoor Adventure Trips. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense to them. It could create some confusion. There's also just not a ton of organizational accountability. We just need more structure and accountability in order to like faithfully steward what God has entrusted to us. And so they asked if I would leave my role at the church and come on full time as the executive director of an umbrella organization that we would start to oversee GOAT and Elias. And so we did that.
So Lead Collective was born.
Lead Collective was born. Yeah. So we gave the church like 6 months, kind of heads up, prayed about it with the elders, and everyone affirmed that was what the Lord was calling us to do. And in January of 2020, we started Lead Collective, and I quit my job, and I had raised probably a third of my like first year's salary when I started. And then like 2 months later, the pandemic hit. And
sweet.
It was like, oh, so do I lay myself off? Like, what do we do? How do we navigate this? And I remember that was just a season and a year where we were walking really closely with the Lord because we had to. And it was a little scary, but it was also exciting. And I'm hardwired for the exciting. Like I kind of like problems. Because I actually really enjoy a whiteboard, and I tend to think there's always a better way of doing something, and I don't like doing things certain ways because that's the way they've always been done. I kind of like the idea of reinventing certain things, and I would say this is when I started to discover that I'm wired a little bit like other entrepreneurs tend to be wired. But the Lord provided that year, and we've grown since. In 2021, we were able to launch a new ministry under that umbrella called Reach. And the reason for that was we had essentially, we had some conversations with folks at the juvenile detention facility who were like, hey, we love what you guys are doing in Nicholtown. Would you be willing to do a satellite version of that in the jail? And they asked us that in 2018. And we were volunteer-led at the time and just didn't have the resources. And so I told them, I was like, hey, guys, I would love to, but we don't have the volunteer horsepower to pull that off right now. But let's put a pin in the conversation and maybe we'll come back to it. So when I went full-time, our goal was make it through this pandemic and figure out what that looks like, hire an operations director who can help develop the infrastructure that we need to support a third ministry that could work with justice-involved youth. And we hired that operations director at the end of the year, and we, in about 6 months into the next year, launched this ministry. And it's funny for entrepreneurs who are listening. They can appreciate when you've got like a plan, and then it just gets, a wrench gets thrown in it. And we launched in August of 2021 because we were told that the juvenile detention facility was reopening because of through the pandemic. We launched. The next week, the detention facility closed for another 2 months. And it was during the time where you would see a spike in COVID cases, and then things would close down, and then they would reopen, and then they'd close down. And it was that whole deal. And we ended up going back in there in around Thanksgiving, and we were in there for 6 months, maybe less, and then it closed down permanently until 2 weeks ago. So our ministry changed from going into the juvenile detention facility twice a week and then pairing students with mentors when they were released. That was the original model for this ministry. When the detention facility closed, we started working with DJJ, which is the Department of Juvenile Justice, working with students who were already involved in the justice system. They had been arrested. They were somewhere in that journey of being involved in the juvenile justice system. They might be on house arrest. They might be on probation. They might have been incarcerated. They might not have been incarcerated. But either way, way they were involved in the juvenile justice system. And we would work with them through this like 1-year program. And, but they weren't court ordered. And we just discovered, man, students and their parents, more their parents than anything, didn't have the skin in the game to buy into a full year of this, which in fairness, for a lot of them, it was like grandma is taking care of this young person, not necessarily because that was grandma's plan. It was just the way life happened.
Yep.
And she's got other responsibilities, or, it's isn't getting around quite as easily. Life is complicated. And so we had high attrition rate where students would start the program but wouldn't finish it. Or students would be coming up on their year, like where they should graduate, and they didn't want to leave because this had become like the only kind of stable, safe environment, and they didn't know how to launch because they'd been with us too long.
Yep.
And so we've been functioning this way for about 6 months, and it has been incredible. But we receive students who are either DJJ ordered or court ordered as a part of their probation terms. We do a 60-day diversion program that is 8 weeks of group mentoring, 4 one-on-one life coaching sessions, 4 one-on-one career development coaching sessions, and then mental health counseling. And it's just a holistic, multi-faceted diversion service where they have case management the whole way. And our goal is, let's get you out of the juvenile justice system so that you can move on with your life and flourish. And we're going to make sure that every one of you hears the gospel clearly while you're in the program, and you're given opportunities to respond to that, however you choose.
That's awesome.
So
you're doing some really cool stuff, man.
Man, love it.
Just impacting people, impacting families, impacting the upstate, impacting neighborhoods. That's great. Let me say a few things, so I know we're up against a time stop here because you got places to be. But earlier we were talking about how, rent in Nickeltown went through the roof. But I want to say this to the listeners: if you are paying rent, chances are you're paying somebody's mortgage. And if you can afford rent, you can probably afford your own home. It is a myth that you need 20% down payment to buy a home. You can probably do as little as 3%. There's even programs out there that are less than that. If you're in that situation and you're listening to this podcast, I would love to help you. I'm a realtor with C. Joyner. That's the local brokerage. I'm a member of Nexus Group, and I will strive to get you the best deal in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of disturbance to your daily life. Maybe you don't have a lot of cash flow. Maybe you're working on credit. I have people that can help you with that. Reach out to me today directly at 864-207-2316 or visit my website, Chris Strother, that's STROTHER, chrisstrother.cdanjoyner.com.
Can I speak to that as just like a testimonial from personal experience?
Absolutely. I just want to get you out of here on time.
All right.
That's all. You do it, man.
I got a 3-minute story that I think can speak to. If you've got any listeners who think, I don't have enough money, I'm not established enough to own my own home, that's something that someone else out there can do, but I can't. I was that person. My parents owned their homes. As like when we moved, they were selling a house and buying a house, and so that was a part of my upbringing. So I recognized that I had like a mental parking place for it, but I thought that was for my parents. Like I didn't think I was established enough. My wife and I had student loan debt that we were paying on. She was working full time for a nonprofit retirement community. I was working full time for a nonprofit, I was probably making between $10 and $12 an hour. And we thought, we're renting right now, we're making our student loan payments, but we're like skating by, we're beans and rice, and we'll buy a house when we get established, whatever the heck that means. And I remember us honestly, if it weren't for the fact that we were committed to the neighborhood we were living in, and staying there long term to put roots down to do community development work. If it weren't for that, we probably wouldn't have pressed into home ownership, but we did. We decided, all right, let's look into this. Let's try and buy a house, because we're seeing rent increase around us. And if that keeps happening, who knows where we're going to end up living. And you feel this sense of like a loss of autonomy over like where you can live. So we started looking into it. We had no money in the bank, and we found an opportunity to purchase a house 3% down. The house that we found was affordable, but it needed work done before we could get the loan. It was like $10,000 worth of work, and we didn't have 10 grand sitting around. And so they were able to do a renovation mortgage for us that ended up getting the work done. So they bundled it together. They
rolled it into the mortgage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Paid the contractors. They did the work for us. We put 3% down. We were able to purchase the house. And I will say that's the only reason that we still live where we live and are able to do ministry in the way that we're doing ministry. And so if you're out there and you think, there's no way I could purchase a home, take Chris up on the offer, give him a call. You
might be surprised. Yep. There's all kinds of tools out there. You don't have to have a ton of money in the bank, but you can own something and it can be yours. And so please give me a call. I would love to help you out. And like I said, I've got relationships with some really good loan officers. They do great work. I've got relationships with a really great real estate attorney. So I'm going to take care of you. All right, man, let's wrap this up. Let's get you out of here on time. I know you got things to do. So let me ask you a few questions. Or let me just first say this again. leadgvl.org. Y'all are doing some fantastic stuff through GOAT, through Elias, and through Reach. Hats off to you. And, the Lord gets the glory for all that.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. Final thoughts on Ferry Otego Metropolitan, Connecticut.
Dude, it was great. It was great. Seriously. Yeah. I don't know. 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's like what I need out of a cigar.
Yeah.
And anything too, like, this was mild enough that it was super enjoyable. I'm sensitive, I think, to nicotine. So, I can get like a nicotine buzz that I don't like. And I didn't get any of that from this, but it was still like super enjoyable, really flavorful. It didn't taste like nothing, you know, how some like lighter cigars might. It was awesome.
No, and it's super light. Like I probably guarantee you about 8 o'clock tonight, your mouth's not going to taste like an ashtray.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be good. I gave one of those to a lady friend of ours who stopped by the house to bring us a meal the other day, and she texted me and said, I smoked that. She said, I don't know what cigars I've been smoking. They must have been garbage. That was awesome.
Yeah, it's a great cigar.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And the CAO Nicaragua never disappoints. Great smoke. Now that you know what my podcast is all about, Cam, just a super casual sit down. Just a couple of recommendations. Who do you think would be a good candidate to come on the show?
Oh, man. You're putting me on the spot. So many people. I'm trying to think of different folks that they don't have to enjoy cigars.
No, they don't have to.
But they're entrepreneurial.
You can get back to me.
Well,
if you don't have any on the top of your head right now, you can shoot me an email.
I know plenty of people who I think would love to be on this and who would be great guests. You know who one of my favorite people and I think would be just a really fun hang, and I think he'd enjoy smoking a cigar with you, is his name's Mikey Hayes. So he's our creative director at Lead Collective, but he started a design company and publishing company called Middle Ground. And I'm always trying to plug his work where I can, but he's self-published 2 books and does design work on the side for folks. And
nice. That'd be fun to talk about, publishing and writing and all that stuff.
And he's the kind of guy who, like, when he wants to do something, he doesn't know about it, he just figures it out.
Mikey Hayes?
Mikey Hayes,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I might hit him up. I'll get his contact info from you. I'm going to get your wife on here and talk about 92% from the free throw line.
Dude.
Let her talk some trash.
Yes. She would also be great. She won't get near the cigar. she's a health junkie,
Yeah.
but she would love to get on here and talk about all that. And she started her own business. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
What is it?
It's called Upstate Mobile Wellness. So she essentially, when we paid off our student loans, the next week she put in her 2 weeks.
Here we go.
And loves like the work that she did, but wanted more time with our kids. So
Yeah.
a lot of things coalesced at the same time.
Yeah.
And she now contracts with different retirement communities teaching group exercise classes. And I'm telling you, like, there's no one better in the world than her at what she does.
Okay, cool. I'll check it out. All right. Well, look, if you are in need of my services as a realtor or with a cigar box, I put my number out there. I'll do it again. 864-207-2316. You can also visit Mobile Cigar Box to check me out, learn more about the business, and fill out the booking inquiry form. If it's real estate related, call me, text me, or shoot an email to cstrother@cdanjoiner.com. Cam, thanks for your time. Thanks for what you're doing. This has been fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. You've been listening to Sunday Afternoon Smokes. I really appreciate it. Share it with your friends, with your family, on your socials. Share it with the world, because Sunday Afternoon Smokes is really sweet. We'll see you next time.